like to welcome Dr. Rob Thomas to Between the Trees sessions. Dr. Rob Thomas is a lecturer in zoology in Cardiff University, and he's going to speak to us today about the golden eagle in Wales, the past, the present and the future. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks very much, everybody. It's great to be back at Between the Trees, and thanks very much to the team for the invitation. Now, today I'm going to be talking about eagles in Wales, and a lot of what I'm talking about has been done as a collaboration with one of our postgrad students, Sophie Lee Williams, at Cardiff University. So is Wales really the land of the eagles? What's our history and perhaps our prehistory of these species in Wales? And there are two species of eagles that are native to the British Isles, the golden eagle and the white-tailed eagle. The golden eagle is a predator of mammals primarily and some larger birds. The white-tailed eagle is a predator of all sorts of things, fish, mammals, water birds, and it's quite a scavenger as well. And we can look at the fossil record and the subfossil record of eagles in Wales, and there are several sites, mainly cave sites, where such remains have been found. So, for example, Cat's Hole Cave on the Gower contains remains of golden eagle. And there are caves along the south and the North Wales coast that contain remains of both species of eagles. So we know that in deep prehistory, these eagles were native to Wales. We can also look at archaeological remains, and in two Roman forts in Wales, in Caerleon and a fort in Gwynedd, we found white-tailed eagle remains. And of course, eagles are an important cultural icon of the Roman world. And it's not to say that these were native eagles. These might have been eagles that were brought to Wales by the Roman legions. But certainly in Roman times, eagles were a feature of Welsh life. And of course, in Wales, we have a strong, deep tradition of literature. And early Welsh literature has a lot of references to eagles. Clearly, eagles were known about and important culturally within Wales. And what we think of as Wales were perhaps a much wider area in those days. In the Dark Ages, Welsh was spoken over a much larger area than it is today. For example, the site of Catraeth, the famous ancient battle of medieval Wales, Wales of the Dark Ages, is known now to be the location of Catterick in the north of England. So just because eagles appear in Welsh poetry, Welsh language poetry, it doesn't mean that those were Wales-dwelling eagles. But some of these poems, some of these bits of literature do refer to some specific locations. For example, this is part of a 9th century saga about Cynddylan, who was a prince of Powys of the 6th or the 7th century. So a lot of these poems are talking themselves about earlier times. And this grey-capped eagle of Penguern, tonight its yelp is shrill, jealous for the flesh I loved. It talks about eagles in particular places. And Ely is thought to be the River Melly in Montgomeryshire. Penguern is the seat of the early kings of Powys, and this is thought to be modern Shrewsbury, technically not part of Wales. So we can look at place names within these poems and see that people writing about these places were familiar with eagles. Much closer to where we are today, there's some literature about an eagle at Aberthaw, not far along the coast from here. It's from a life of St. Cadog. St. Cadog was an early Welsh saint, but this is an account of his life written in the 1080s. And it talks about a king, King Morcant, hunting along the bank of the river Nadhayan. And the river Nadhayan is thought to be the River Thaw at Aberthaw, just a few miles from here. And there's an account of the king losing his falcon and his son-in-law returning that falcon from the grasp of an eagle. And across Wales, there are place names that refer to eagles. There are 64 place names in Welsh language that refer to Ered or Ererod, and we can map these. This is the map of those locations. There's a non-random distribution of these locations across Wales, and a lot of them are around Snowdonia, and the name for Snowdonia itself is Eryri, the eagle's nest. So we can see in Welsh language and history and our place names, we have a lot of evidence that we can put together for the presence of eagles in Wales in our history. More recently, we can look at persecution records. Now and again, eagles were shot in Wales or trapped, and when this happened, this was a big event, and it would be published in the local paper, the regional paper. And there are 24 such reports from the Welsh newspaper archives, and we can map these locations as well. And much more recently, we have the tradition of ornithology. Thomas Pennant was perhaps our first ornithologist, but many hundreds and thousands of eagle-eyed birdwatchers scouring the skies of Wales have come up with eagle records more recently as well. So we can put these locations together on maps, observational, place name and archaeological records, and start to understand where in Wales has this strongest tradition of eagles in our history and culture. And of course, not all of these place names refer to a specific species of eagle. So all of the place name records just refer to eagles. We don't know if they're golden eagles or white-tailed eagles. But by looking at the identities of the eagle records where we do know the species, we can use features like the altitude, the distance to the coast, the habitat type to predict what would the species be of eagles referred to in those place name records, for example. So if we do that and put all those records together, we can get this combined map of Wales with all of our historic, prehistoric eagle records assigned to different species, the golden and the white-tailed eagle. And then we can map those with a technique called kernel distribution analysis to identify the hotspots. And the hotspot for golden eagle is Snowdonia, North Wales, as we might expect, perhaps. And the hotspot for white-tailed eagles is also North Wales and the North Wales coast, including the Isle of Anglesey and Ynys Môn, but also the South Wales coast. And in fact, the last breeding records of eagles in Wales were, again, not far from here, between the trees, at Cenfydd Burrows. Between 1816 and 1828, there was a run of eagle breeding records of white-tailed eagles at Cenfydd Burrows. So we can see that there is, in our history and culture, a strong tradition of eagles being known about and talked about. And even in the present day, we have had a golden eagle living in Wales. This is Edwina, the Tregaron eagle. It's actually an escaped falconer's golden eagle. And it is originally, when it was first found by birdwatchers, it was called Eddie the eagle, obviously. Then it was discovered that it was a lady eagle, so it was renamed Edwina. And Edwina had quite a cult following. She had her own Facebook page, for example, and the sightings were sporadic but clustered around Tregaron, one of the best places in the world, perhaps, in mid-Wales. With some of our students from Cardiff University, we had some pre-COVID attempts at camera trapping by putting roadkill fox corpses out on the hills and setting up camera traps next to them. Edwina never turned up, but we had a lot of fun looking at videos of buzzards and ravens and all sorts of things. But unfortunately, Edwina is no more. She died, seemingly of old age, natural causes, in August this year. And so we no longer have a golden eagle living in Wales. But Edwina provides very strong evidence that clearly the Welsh landscape can sustain golden eagles, or at least a golden eagle, across multiple years in the uplands of Wales. Wales is an oddity in the British Isles in that it doesn't have resident eagles these days, with reintroduced populations in Ireland and most recently on the Isle of Wight. where there's a white-tailed eagle reintroduction in progress at the moment. All the other nations have their eagles. Of course, we did have one eagle in Wales, but no more. And so it's an interesting question as to whether eagles can potentially return to the Welsh landscape as an integral part of our history and our culture. And this is where we've been doing at Cardiff University a feasibility study for such a potential reintroduction of either golden eagle or much more likely white-tailed eagle in future years. But reintroductions aren't something that you can rush into. The reintroduction process is a strict and highly regulated process, rightly so, and there are a lot of licensing procedures and checks and balances to talk about, and this is all coordinated by Natural Resources Wales. So Sophie Lee's work at Cardiff University has focused primarily on the biology and ecology of this sort of question, the biological and environmental feasibility of bringing eagles back to the Welsh landscape. What would it mean for us? But there are some important next steps, looking at the social and political feasibility, the economic feasibility, the costs and benefits of having eagles in a landscape, and the environmental risk assessments, because of course eagles like to eat things. So these are the key questions that we're currently asking. We've answered the question in this talk, are eagles native to Wales? Absolutely. But there are important other questions to address. Has the cause of regional extinction been removed? Persecution was the primary driver of extinction of eagles from Wales, but we still have persecution incidents of birds of prey within Wales that need to be addressed and eliminated. Could Wales still support an eagle population? A lot of our current work is looking at prey availability and distribution. And where would the eagles be sourced from? If it was a white-tailed eagle reintroduction, these would be individuals sourced from the population in Norway, which is a very strong population. We have research contacts with the researchers there. And is there public and stakeholder support? And this is a big question, of course. Eagles are predators, and having predators in the landscape potentially has implications for the agricultural industry and also for conservation. White-tailed eagles potentially will eat seabirds, and so understanding their impact on Wales's internationally important seabird colonies is a crucial aspect of any scoping exercise. So if you'd like to follow the project in the future, there's a website for the Eagle Reintroduction Wales project. There's a Facebook page and Twitter, and at the moment we're looking to extend Sophie Lee's work on these eagle species through crowdfunding for conservation, research and action. Thank you.